So we have about 25 minutes for Q&A. I want to start with just one general question for the panelists, and then I'm going to turn it over to ask questions of the committee to ask the committee members to think about questions they might want to pose. And once the committee members have posed a few questions, we'll open up to the general audience. But as committee members are thinking of their questions, I'm not sure any of you really touched on the ways in which your program uses distance learning as a teaching modality. Do you want to speak to that at all? Betsy, do you want to start? Or? Probably.
Can you hear me now? Oh, yeah. The community colleges that articulate into the four-year institutions all do a combined distance ed and some face-to-face coursework. At New Mexico State University, we don't. Some of our courses are hybrid. Every once in a while, someone wants to teach one online, but we focus our online coursework at our master's and PhD level. And I think it's because I'm old school, and I just feel like you can't really learn about kids and families unless you're with them. And so I wonder if someday we will be pushed to do that, but at this point, on main campus, it's mostly face-to-face at that level.
Okay, thanks. And please direct your comments to the audience, not to me. I mean, your answers, that's fine.
Much like Betsy, at the University of Pittsburgh, in our CASE program, we do not offer online or distance education options for the students in our program. For many of the same reasons that Betsy said, we struggle with the idea of preparing teachers to work with children and to work with learners if they are not face-to-face, learning from an individual. I think likely, as Betsy noted, we will be pushed eventually to do that as we see it as an integral part of other teacher prep programs, but not at the CASE program at this time. At the university, those students do have the opportunity to take online classes in the liberal arts prerequisites prior to coming into the specific program.
Okay, thank you.
At Ames, as I mentioned, our 10 core courses, we have had to offer both online and face-to-face to meet the different needs of our students. We are in a rural part of Colorado, and there are those students who absolutely have no access to good internet. They must have face-to-face. And then we have the traditional students who come from the university or come from straight to Ames who are highly technologically literate. So we do alternate course delivery between online and face-to-face for most of our core courses. So students who can only do online or only do face-to-face can eventually work through all those courses.
At the University of Northern Colorado in our program, we do offer several classes online. We selected the classes to offer online that were best suited for online instruction. The other ones we teach on site. The classes that we offer online are also taken by other programs in the state. Assessment for early childhood, classroom management, different classes. Ames does a wonderful job of offering their director qualification classes online. The other colleges around the state, they also offer those online. So when it's time for students to be able to take the classes, they can take those anywhere in the state, which is very, very helpful.
Great, thank you. We'll be hearing later in one of the other panels a bit more about distance learning and how it's incorporated into these early childhood degree programs. With that, do any of the committee members have a question? Noni?
I'm going to, sorry, Noni. I'm just going to make a quick announcement, a technical announcement for those on the webcast. In order for the Q&A tool to submit questions from the webcast, you're all going to need to refresh your browser once in order to get that activated. So if you're having trouble with the tool, that's why. And just click the refresh button and log back onto the webcast. So you can either do that now or on the break in between panels. Sorry.
And does whoever asks a question, do they need a mic?
Probably.
Okay.
I'll meet you halfway.
Thanks very much for your presentations. I have a question for you, for Betsy Cahill from New Mexico. I picked up on your comment about the teachers who are good teachers but can't pass the test. And I wondered if we might unpack that a little more, such as how do you first, what are you using to suggest they are good teachers? And that doesn't have any subtext to it. But what are your metrics there? And then what would be a better measure that would capture what you're seeing as good teaching and learning in those settings if they can't pass this test? And what is it about them and or the test? I just wanted to hear more about that.
Sure. And I don't know if I know what it is about them. Can you hear me? Yeah. Some can, some can't. I will speak louder. I think part of this is what we're wondering. Part of it is the writing. And so we had an increase in test scores this last semester, and I have for a year worked with an English intern who has been co-teaching a study session with me, and we've specifically worked on writing. And because the exam they take in New Mexico has a large proportion of writing. That will change soon because we're going to the NES test system a year from now, which is simply multiple choice. And I actually think the students will do better. I do believe writing is a problem, and somebody else mentioned the issue of funding. I think it was you, Judy, funding some developmental coursework. Part of the issue is the students, I'll sideline here, they run out of financial aid. They've been going for 8 years, and so all of a sudden some of the coursework that we may encourage them to take, like another English course, they just can't afford it and it won't be paid for. So first there's that issue. I think what would be better, and first of all, how I know is because I watch them with children, and my colleagues watch them with children, and our lab school teachers watch them, and they can tell that children are actually learning something, and it seems successful. I think the national board certification process, something where they videotape the students think deeply about what they're doing, if we could replicate that at the undergraduate level, I believe it would be more meaningful, but it would cost more. You'd have to have people who review the work. And actually, at this point, they don't have Spanish reviewers. And so if our students are teaching in Spanish contexts, they don't even have anybody to review them anyway. So does that answer?
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. I think Lisa has a question. And just for the recording, why don't you say your name so we'll have that record?
Hi, I'm Lisa Guernsey with New America in Washington, D.C. Thank you. It's really helpful to hear all of you describe your programs. My question is a bit of a follow-up to Noni's. I myself had been wondering about the test question, but now when I think about your answer, and Betsy, feel free to answer this, but I would love to hear from everyone on the panel how you kind of detect or measure what growth your pre-service students have been going through in terms of their interactions with children in various settings and students in the K-3 world. Are you able to use tools, and one that comes to mind, but it's certainly not the only one, is the class, tools that can help perhaps pinpoint or enable some reflection on that teaching? And if not, can you talk a little bit about what it is about those that maybe don't work for your programs?
I think that's an excellent question. We use many different types of assessment. When you look at the different types of assessment, obviously they measure different things. We have a very strong professional development forum where we look at what are qualities that we want students to have as they become teachers. We have all of our teachers fill that out in the practicums. We have our students fill that out, and we fill that out several times during the program. We also have assessments for academics, where we have students put together projects. We have exams. We have different type of problems. We have a problem-based curriculum within our early childhood program. We have transitional assessments as we go through that are checkpoint assessments. We have finger points and prints and background checks. When they're getting ready to graduate, they have to have a 3.0 to move into their senior year. So we have a grade check there. We also have our students take our state qualifying exam, which is the place test. We have problems with that as well. Some of our best and brightest students take it 3-4 times. One had such a difficult time taking it. She passed it, then she went on to become a pediatrician. So we have not been seeing much correlation with who's passing that exam and who's performing well in the field. We also have exit interviews. We have university supervisors that provide feedback and exit interviews. We have our teachers that provide midterms and finals that go on our students' files. So we have a lot of assessment along the way. Really, we're looking for growth. We're looking to see what students can do with children in all areas of development, supporting them, growing them through the program. Some students, it takes a little bit longer than others. Some may need to redo a practicum situation. Some may need to take a class over, but we assist them and we work with them until they can be successful, if they can be.
At the community college level, we also do a lot of the similar things with both formative and summative assessment throughout each individual course. Because we are accredited, we do have the key assessments that are in place for our core courses, and students are doing projects, doing a lot of self-reflection. In our practicums, they are doing both midterm and final self-assessment, as well as the instructor assessment, as well as the cooperating teacher assessment, combining all of these things together. They are learning about and using the class in some of their curriculum courses and using it in their practicum courses in limited ways, because not all of the placements use that tool. So we are really focused on helping them go from where they are to where they best can be, including a lot of reflective practice and intentional teaching.
Very similar to what Susan and Judy mentioned, we use many of the similar things at the University of Pittsburgh. Of course, in our courses, there are assessments throughout. Students are often expected to create lesson plans, to create activities for whatever the course may be, and then implement them either in their observational or practicum experiences. Each of those experiences is either monitored by a university faculty member who visits and is able to see the student work in action, or by a university supervisor. So our students in the CASE program have multiple supervisors depending upon the placement that they're in, both special and general education. And we also have a new test in Pennsylvania, fairly new, called the PECT, which is the certification test for our students. We've had some difficulties with that as well. As Susan and Betsy have mentioned, they have. Also, ours is fully multiple choice. The state has put in an option, though, for students to either achieve a certain score to pass it, or to achieve a somewhat lower score and consider their GPA in the program. So that's one way the state has worked. I don't know that that's perfect yet, though. But I think throughout we are really looking for growth in the placements. We require our teachers to be very reflective in the observations that they receive from both university supervisors and mentor teachers. And one of the reasons we really want to strengthen the bond between who they're in classrooms with is to make sure that they're really with a strong teacher who can provide us with some quality feedback. And I think that we're really moving towards that goal, but one of the challenges, as I mentioned previously with that, is sometimes who districts, help us place students with, and we want to make sure our students are with strong people who every day can give feedback to them that really will make a difference in their growth.
So really, it just sounds like in each of your cases, you have these various assessments throughout the course of study as a way of evaluating your teacher prior to that culminating teacher's exam that many of them end up having various success rates with that. Betsy, do you do anything different from what we've heard so far?
I don't think so. I think the only thing I would add is what's hard is probably true for all of us, is that we are developmentalists at heart. And so we really want to see our students be successful. And so we try to provide them with lots of support. And one of the hardest things is when you do those transition points where you stop and say, is this student ready to move on? And those are required by our accreditation. Mm-hmm. Sometimes to find out no is tough.
Right.
It's really tough.
Thank you. How about one more question from a committee member, then I'll open it up to, I see two hands. No, we too wrongly.
Thank you.
I couldn't see her down there. No.
Betsy, in your sort of reflections on what would be helpful for your program, you mentioned an increase in faculty with PhDs and MAs. So I would like to ask you and the rest of the panel to give us a bit of information about the status of your faculties, whether or not they have degrees in early childhood, whether or not you think that's important. And I'd also like to know a bit about full-time versus adjunct faculty.
Okay. We have 5 full-time faculty, and 1, 2, 3, 4 have PhDs in early childhood education. I think the 5th one is in just curriculum and instruction, probably elementary. And then we hire, for example, last fall, I had to hire 13 part-time faculty to meet our needs. We have a huge need for faculty. And last year when we did a search, we only had, out of the 11 people who applied, only 2 even had content in early childhood. So, but we got a great person. So I think it is really a challenge, and I don't know if it's for everybody, it is for New Mexico, but if you open up the Chronicle of Higher Ed, there are tons of early childhood positions all over the country. So it's competitive. So what New Mexico is doing, and actually we're doing it with the Erickson Institute, is we're trying to grow our own. And so we've currently got a lot of Teach Scholarship money, and we are able to support 16 future doctoral candidates, and they're starting this summer, and it's online.
Great.
And they have to, and it's like a medical model, and they have to stay in New Mexico for 5 years. And I think Erickson has it for a master's level, right? And they're New Mexico students with Teach scholarships, so students had a choice as to what they wanted to do, because we have to grow our own. There's no choice.
We have much less of a staffing issue at the University of Pittsburgh. I apologize for not having numbers across the 4 programs, but the vast majority are full-time faculty at the university who hold either PhDs or EDDs in their chosen field across early childhood, elementary, special education, or child development. At times, we do use PhD or EDD students within those fields to cover courses, but we have a cohort model program where we either require 1 or 2 sections of the courses each year, and typically it's the same person, even if it is 2 sections, that will flip with the students and teach both of those. So that's less of a concern for us at this time.
At Ames, I'm both unfortunate and fortunate, if you might say. I am the only full-time person, and that's fairly typical in the community colleges in Colorado. Mm-hmm. I work with between 6 and 8 different part-time faculty each semester. I've been fortunate because they're very steady. Every one of them has a master's degree in early childhood ed or child development. One of them has a couple master's degrees, but they were very hard to find. So I try to do as much as I can to support them staying with us. One of the issues is the pay. Basically, part-time faculty are paid for the number of minutes they are in a class and nothing else. So it's a huge struggle. I do have great faculty, and I hope we can keep them.
Thank you.
At UNC, we have 2 full-time faculty devoted to early childhood. Then we have 4 faculty that have doctoral degrees and are professors that cut across boundaries and share some of our courses and teach them. We have a graduate with a doctorate who is a kindergarten teacher and a director at a private school. She teaches our online classes. Then we have 1 adjunct with a master's who also teaches at Ames Community College. She used to be there full-time and she retired. Now she teaches 2 classes for us and 2 for Ames.
Gosh, a lot of variety there. Thank you. Any non-committee members have a question? Okay. So there's a woman there. We have a few here.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Abby Jukes from Cal Poly Pomona. I'm wondering if you've given any thought to the recent announcement just last week from the Federal Department of Education and their proposal for teacher prep programs and the new accountability model of then tracking graduates and seeing their impacts on the children that they're working with. Particularly thinking about kinds of some of the challenges even in getting students through these programs, and if you've had a chance to think about that, but that was something that I think is really relevant if that's going to come into play, and I know some states are actually enacting that, so I think it probably will happen in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. Why don't we have one or two of you respond to that, okay?
We have started at the University of Pittsburgh to think through that. We will be up for reaccreditation through our State Department of Education, and that is a requirement as far as tracking the impact that our graduates have on students. We're really at the initial discussion levels of that. We believe we'll go through that in 2016, 2017, and we've started to brainstorm at a teacher education level about how will we measure the impact that our teachers have on students, and at the very primary level, how will we keep track of them a number of years out when you know it's quite challenging when students graduate and move on to really even find out what they're doing and where they're at. So we're really at the very basic level of that, but as you mentioned, our state will require that as well.
We're talking a lot about that in Colorado. Did I cut you off, Betsy? No. Okay. We've been talking with teachers, we've been talking with our pre-service students, preparing them for that. That's a difficult issue for many people. What happens is, if you have schools where children enter, they are not as advanced developmentally, but they've grown tremendously. Those schools are still measured against schools where children come in populations that don't have different needs than other schools have. One of my adopted daughters, we got her at 10 a few years ago. She didn't speak a word of English. She had never been to school. She had kidney failure. We put her in our local third grade school. It was interesting because the principal said, by the end of the year, we'll have her on benchmark. And I said, really, that'll be really interesting. That's quite a trick. When she took those exams, obviously, she did not do well. Yet she had one of the strongest teachers that I have ever worked with. So that is a challenging issue that I think we, as early childhood educators, are going to be discussing for a very long time to come.
May I just add, I think it depends what we're measuring as growth and development. And if it's test scores on how to read and do your math, that's okay, but it's not enough for the kids that we serve. We have to look at a much more integrated approach to how we're measuring child success in school.
And thanks much for the question. It's obviously very timely, and
It's
we need to give a lot more thought to it. So I think we can squeeze in two more questions if we can go quickly. And so, Bridget, do you want to decide who?
I'll share the burden.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Rolando O'Connor, University of California at Riverside. You've all made amazing changes in your programs in the last 10 years, and we've so enjoyed listening to them. I'm wondering if you could think about, of those changes, if one was to be pivotal in improving the adult's ability to work with children in birth to 8, what change do you think you've made in professional development that has taken that status within your programs?
Would be our collaborative work with Ames. Has opened so many doors for us and our students. It's made education very accessible. It's made it valuable, practical, and I think all of us have grown tremendously from that beginning effort.
Exactly.
Michelle, quickly, do you have a
I think at the
response?
University of Pittsburgh, because our students start in a different college, the College of Arts and Sciences, being able to strengthen our relationship with that college in our university has been the piece that I think has strengthened our program. We are able to better advise students and have them prepared. We have less students who are behind on prerequisites and need to make that up or stay an additional year beyond the 5. And I think helping our university recognize that we have a teaching program that begins at the undergraduate level when our other programs begin at the graduate level has been a challenge. To get people to think around, yes, we have undergraduate students, and what does that mean, and preparing them to be the best teachers. So strengthening that relationship, I think, has played a big role in our strength of our program.
Great.
And for us, it's probably the higher education task force work, because we work with Department of Health, CYFD, the Public Education Department, and they're part of our group. And so we're always talking about what we can do better. And I think without that group, we would be a little siloed and not make much progress for the kids or the students.
Well, thank you for those comments. Okay, Doug?
I think we're out of time.
And Fabian, were you? Any last questions? We have a couple of minutes.
Well, if we got a couple of
Well, we have a minute, I guess. Go ahead, if it's just a minute. Yeah.
The answer isn't so quick, I think. The question might be, which, especially for Michelle, but all of you used the word development and child development a lot. We've been talking, several members of the committee on the side, about how everybody agrees they should know child development. It's not clear we're talking about the same thing, or that child development can honestly be used as a term that means one single thing. Certainly there's development within the disciplines as well as overall development, physical development, social, emotional development. I don't know how you do it, Michelle, and then any other comments from others.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I definitely agree with you. I think I sided a lot on using that term because it was what was utilized in having us prepare for this. But I think for our program specifically, we think of developmentally appropriate practices is a term we use much more regularly. So across the different areas in preparing our students to be strong teachers of literacy, strong teachers of language, strong teachers of mathematics. So we look at developmentally appropriate practices across that realm, but then also just an understanding, how do children, both who are typical and atypical, develop along a continuum from birth to age 5. But I agree with you that I think we have to have a common vocabulary if we want to make sure we're discussing the same things and what role each of those pieces and the percentage of the role that might play.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Does anyone have a comment, something different to say, to add to that, just
when
briefly?
we talk about development, we always come back to the child. We look at it as a holistic development, how children grow and learn physically, cognitively, emotionally, and socially. That informs all that we have done from the very beginning, and it's a strand that goes across every single class within our programs.
Great. Well, we are out of time now. I want to thank the panelists. This information really is invaluable to the committee. It will inform our work in ways that you can't imagine. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.